You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
FM 88.1 WHPR, Highland Park.
WVIE 107.3 FM Charlotte, Amalia, Virgin Islands.
The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
Detroit, you are tuned in to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie here on 88.1 FM WHPR in Detroit, 107.3 WVIE in the Virgin Islands. Those of you that are on our Facebook Live that are tuned in all around the country and around the world, welcome, welcome, welcome. You know, I'm excited about tonight's show, not just because of the topic, but because he's a friend of mine. And actually, there's a little story to go along with this friendship because I really didn't have aspirations to be a radio show host. I had thought about doing some podcasting because people were interested in some of my Facebook Live posts and things of that nature, but I didn't give it any serious thought. And then I was connected to Ben. And Ben and Terry were starting a show. And so they were like, hey, would you like to be a guest on our show? So I came on the show. And what was it called, Ben?
It was called It's Your City.
Yeah, It's Your City. And so I came and I was a guest on It's Your City. And he was kind of like, hey, you know, you're kind of like a natural. You should do this. And I'm like, all right, well, if I do it, it's going to be called Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. Well, that was the name of my master's thesis. So I didn't have to do a lot of thinking to come up with the name of this show. That was the name of my master's thesis. And that's what I decided I would call the show. And I ended up here at WHPR. So I want to give kudos to Ben for allowing me to catapult my platform off of his platform. And I want to welcome to the studios tonight my friend, Ben. Say what's up to Detroit.
Hello, how are you? I'll go by my real name. Oftentimes I go by the pseudonym Ben Todd, which is my first and middle name. But I'm Benn Plassman, and I guess I'm honored to be here. And yes, you're right. I remember, like it was yesterday actually, coming on with you, and then you saying eventually, well, I'd like to kind of do my own show, and it's history from there.
Mm-hmm. You know, I respect you, and I honor you quite a bit. We both are MBA holders with a different concentration.
Yes.
You're a finance guy, and I'm happy to announce here first that Ben is going to have a new show, and it's going to be called Finance and Politics in the Morning. Is that correct?
Finance, News, and Politics in the Morning.
Okay, Finance, News, and Politics in the Morning. Tell us a little bit about that show.
So like previous shows I've had in the past, it's going to mix a little bit of activism along with the show. But it's going to be different in several ways. First off, it's going to be talking about national politics and national economics. It's going to be a new show. It's going to be on 5 days a week. And it's going to be a morning show. So the goal is we want to get influential people on along with academics and experts and discuss political issues and economic issues in particular. And we are going to mix that in along with the news. And one of the reasons why I'm doing it, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important, is because being somebody with an MBA in finance and understanding finance as well as economics, when you work in finance, you deal a lot with economics, basically. When looking at the financial and economic landscape, in my opinion, and not just in my opinion, in the opinion of many economists, our policymakers have it all wrong. And as a result, the U.S. economy isn't growing at the same rate it used to. We used to be a much more prosperous society, and we're not doing that. We average 3% economic growth a year. We haven't had 3% economic growth, though, since 2004. And it's causing a lot of times college graduates to end up moving back in with their parents. It's causing student loan crisis. It's causing a debt crisis in the United States because we budgeted for a lot more revenue. Our U.S. government budgeted for a lot more revenue than it actually has because we assumed that the economy would consistently grow at a certain rate, and it hasn't. And so that's a big problem with our debt. And if this continues, the United States, we're going to either have to cut almost all social programs and almost all spending and pay off our debt, or we're going to go into default, which I view that as probably very unlikely. Or I guess another option, which doesn't seem very likely either, would be we'd have to devalue our currency by quite a bit. And so these aren't good outcomes, and they're real problems. And yet I feel that the debate, the political debate, isn't centered on our real problems. It's centered on these outdated talking points about more taxes versus less taxes, taxes on the wealthy versus less taxes on them. A lot of times they're based on wedge issues, social issues, where you can divide people easily. But the problem is, while this is all happening, our economy and our society as a whole has kind of fallen behind. And so it's a big problem.
I agree with you, and I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we'll get into the new outgoing president and incoming president a little bit later. When does your show make its debut?
Inauguration Day, January 20th. So we got some time.
Okay. Are you going to take a conservative approach? Because I know with your other show, you asked some really tough questions of some really influential people. It was like no holds barred. You would ask really, really tough questions. So is this show going to be that transparent, like holding people accountable, exposing corruption, and all of those type of things? Will you still have that same sort of program?
Yeah. That's how I kind of do things. I don't want to hold back in many ways. And so, yeah, if you can't answer a question, you shouldn't come on my show. And if you're on my show and didn't expect to answer a question, well, you should, because you're a public official. You're held accountable by the people, and you need to be able to answer basic questions about things, you know? And so I view it as, if you're going to come on the show, you better be prepared to answer any type of question regarding what you support or what you believe or what you do.
I agree with that approach. And, you know, to me, I've had people ask for the questions ahead of time, and it's just like, no, you know, it takes, I like a very organic response. And like I said, you know, I don't like doing that. I believe the same way that you believe. If you're going to come on this show and you're going to be a guest on this show, and we're going to talk about you or something that you're doing, why do you need the questions ahead of time? Just decline the interview then. You know, why do you need to know the questions ahead of time? And I don't particularly care for that. So what platform can people tune in on to see you?
Well, it's going to be on Facebook Live. We haven't worked out the platforms entirely yet. I know a lot of times we did things organically. We used Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and that was pretty much it. And iTunes, obviously, and all podcast networks. And podcasting was really what got us attention. And we were getting quite a few downloads in the past. And so I think that's kind of how we're going to do things with this show. You know, in this day and age, with the internet being the way it is, you know, you're going to have a platform out there. And if people are interested in it, you're going to have interest and you're going to have listeners.
Great. So you're tuned in to 88.1 FM, Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. And I am in the studio with my friend Benn Plassman, who is going to have a new show called News, Finance, and Politics in the Morning, debuting on Inauguration Day in 2021. So let's dig into a little bit of news and politics and finance. So I'm going to do this next segment, and I called it Politics and Politricks. Can you roll that clip for me, Marquise?
He's a loser, and he's just what he appears to be. He's a loser, and now he's just a nobody. The vote is in, and it's clear Trump has lost. Come January, his ass will be tossed. He couldn't throw out the votes sent by mail, and now he wonders, will he go to jail? He's a loser, and he's as crooked as can be. He's a loser, and I hope they throw away the key. Now like a toddler he whines and he cries, tweets that he's won and believes his own lies. He claims there's fraud, but alas, there's no proof. Big orange baby can't handle the truth. He's a loser without a shred of dignity. He's a loser, worst president in history. When Arizona and Georgia turned blue, Donald got lawyers and promised to sue. It matters not all the lawyers he's hired. The people voted, and Donald, you're fired. He's a loser, and he has no integrity. He's a loser, and now he's just a nobody.
He's a loser. And I am so happy that is the end of an era. Not era, E-R-A, error, E-R-R-O-R. I believe he was the worst president in United States history. I believe he won and lost for the same reasons. Norm-busting, political, outside of the box views and talking and tweeting too damn much. That got him in, and that got him out. Becoming one of only 4 incumbents in our modern era to not get reelected another 4 years, and the first president to lose the popular vote in consecutive elections. We're talking about Donald Trump, also known as 45. So, Ben, I have a problem voting a lot of times. I have no political party affiliation. There is no political party that supports the ideals of me being a Black woman in America. I have voted for candidates who were Republican and Democratic in my past. But most often, when I cast a ballot, it is for the lesser of two evils. It is most often because I don't want this person, not because I really do want this person. I'm sort of tired of voting in that manner. I really wish that I could vote for someone for president that I would really, really want to see in that position. I have said once, and I will say many times, Biden-Harris was not my choice for a couple of reasons. I mean, when Senator Harris was running for president herself, she bashed the hell out of Joe Biden. And then
She
6
did.
months later, he the best thing since sliced damn bread because he asked you to run for vice president with him. So all of a sudden, the scales of justice flipped like you did when you were a senator on that crime bill out in California, just wishy-washy. I don't care if it's a scooby or whatever the hell going on. That right there tripped me out.
It is pretty shameless if you think about it, you know. I guess that's how politics is, and you get to see it firsthand, you know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, she pretty much called him out. She essentially called him racist, and then next thing you know, she wants to be on his ticket.
I am tired of the first black syndrome. Not saying I would not pay homage, but in 2020, saying the first black anything to me is an atrocity. Like, we still shouldn't even be having first of anything in 2020. However, I cast a vote for Obama for the first black man for president. I'm done with the first black stuff. I'm not casting no more votes off of skin color. And not saying I did not believe he was intelligent, not saying that I did not believe he can do certain things for the country or whatever, but he didn't totally deliver to Black America and for Black America during those 8 years. Mm-hmm. I believe the LGBTQ plus community garnered a lot and achieved a lot of success under the Obama administration. But for me as a black woman, there has not been any president in their seat that made my life any easier. I have to get up and grind every day, regardless of who the damn president is. Mm-hmm. But I definitely did not want the Biden-Harris ticket. I did not want it. But now that they won, what do you think, as a finance guy and an economist, mm-hmm. what does the Biden victory mean to the United States and the rest of the world from a financial perspective?
It means we're going to be spending less. I know there's going to be a large COVID stimulus. They're talking about it right now, around $900 billion. There's also potential other fundings as well. But it appears, based on what he signaled to people through sources and through things he said on his own, we're not going to be spending as much. We're not going to have this out of control spending and tax cuts outside of the stimulus. And so that'll be interesting. What I found interesting about his candidacy, and I think it was a winning formula, I did vote for him in the primary because I honestly just wanted to see somebody beat Trump. And I didn't view any candidate in the Democratic field as having any decent concrete ideas for how to move America forward, to be honest. They really didn't, in my opinion. And so, as a result, I voted for Biden because polls showed that he had the best shot at winning. And I think what Biden's doing is he really doesn't have a plan for the future. But he's going to let things go as a status quo. He's not going to let these stupid tax cuts continue to proceed. And they are in many ways very stupid. There are certain tax cuts that were okay. But in many ways, for example, the way that they went about the corporate tax cut, for example, they made it in such a way so when you cut corporate taxes, businesses, they budget for the next year. When Trump cut the corporate tax rate, what he did was he made it effective immediately. So it really was just a handout to corporations that wasn't necessarily going to attract businesses. And the thought of reducing the corporate tax rate is that by doing so, businesses from overseas might come back and move their headquarters back to America and create jobs in America. And so things like that Trump did are going to be overturned in many ways. And so that's good. But and as far as seeking a different path forward, all indications point to the fact that there's probably not going to be much of a difference. We might get $10,000 cut off our student loan debt, which many Americans have. But outside of that, I don't see many concrete economic plans, at least.
Okay, that's interesting. I do believe historically that Democrats are generally more for social programs than Republicans. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And so I believe with that, a lot of social programs will be reinstated, some that were cut, and then others will be funded. That's a good thing. However, when I take a look at other things, you talked about the jobs coming back from overseas. That's a great thing. But the way Trump went about it, it's like he bullied them. Like he was in the White House. He was running the presidency like death row records.
Yeah. And you know what? Jobs is a stupid metric, in my opinion. There's a lot of crappy jobs out there, and Trump brought some crappy jobs back. The unemployment rate was really low, and so Trump says this is the greatest economy in history, which is absolutely absurd. It's still a slightly below average economy under Trump. Annual economic growth rates were well below the historic average. So he really didn't do much in terms of the economy. But in terms of the unemployment rate, yeah, unemployment was really low. But, you know, like unemployment was low in the Soviet Union in the 1990s. It doesn't mean that that's a good thing necessarily. And so, yeah, I think his jobs record, which is what he'll point to, is one of the most overrated aspects of his presidency. And I think historians will believe that as well.
You know, looking at doing things differently in America under the Biden administration, I don't believe that there are a lot of new things that have to be done. I just think that there are a lot of things that can be done differently. When he gets in office, and I'll explain, simply just anyone that's in jail over your crime bill that had excessive sentencing and all of this other stuff from that bill that you created, that Harris enforced, I think you should take a look at that and start releasing some of those people. Anyone that's in jail for marijuana, I think you should start releasing some of those people. It's things like that that you can just undo, make some of those wrongs right. You don't need a platinum plan or all of these fancy names or whatever. You can start out by looking at police brutality. You can start out protecting whistleblowers. You know, and I think that could be first.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who have a lot of information on Trump, I'm sure. So if Biden just come in with the Whistleblower Protection Act,
Oh, boy.
just start right there.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things. You don't have to come in and recreate the wheel. We are used to operating under the Constitution the way that it was written, and it needs to be rewritten. But since that's where we are and that's where we're at, we've learned to integrate. We learned a bunch of other things along the way. All you have to do is right some of those wrongs in your first 4 years, and I believe it would get you a second term just by not doing dumb shit.
I mean, that could, but I don't think he wants a second term. I think he's just going to have one term. I mean, how old is he now? He's, 74? He'll be 78 then. I can't imagine him wanting another term at 78. But it could happen. I don't know. And, yeah, he really has been kind of vague on what he wants to do other than the fact that he's said, I'm pretty much going to reverse everything Trump has done. So we'll see.
And I'm so tired of that. You know, Obama didn't do anything. Well, you spent 4 years undoing a lot of stuff. If you said he didn't do anything, you spent 4 years trying to undo a lot of things, Obamacare and a whole bunch of other things.
No, Obama did a lot, yeah.
I believe he did too. By the way, sidebar, Owen Roper is on here, and that's how you and I met. Owen Roper
Where's Owen at?
He's on Facebook.
Oh.
I see him on the live waving, and that's how you and I got
Yes,
connected
that's
initially
right,
from
that's
Owen.
right.
So what's up, Brother Owen? We see you out there, and thanks for supporting the show.
Old times.
I also believe, I'm going to go quickly into this election process. When you're talking about banning things or legislation, it would be great if they protected whistleblowers. But I also think the Electoral College should be abolished. I believe we should just go by popular votes in America. I don't believe that we need the Electoral College. What about you?
I don't believe the Electoral College is fair. But with that being said, I don't see it changing. You have it would have to be a constitutional amendment for it to happen. And you have a Congress that has obviously benefited by and large from an electoral college system and a disproportionate representation system, which is what the Electoral College really is. So for them, it would be very counterintuitive, and there'd be no incentive for them to try to reform it. So I don't see that happening anytime soon, but you never know. I do support, though, just a straight up vote. It makes no sense for there to be, for somebody's vote in one state to carry much more weight than another person's vote in a different state.
I agree. But I agree with you also. It will probably never change. It's a lot of things in the Constitution that may have been very relevant then that are not very relevant now. But like you said, the likelihood of any of that changing or things going in a different direction for us will not happen, because the scales of justice is for just us, meaning them, not justice, to be fair for everybody. It's the scales of just us, long as it works for us. And I believe if any of the Congress people, senators alike had to live by the same rules, the same health care, the same things that the majority of the American people have to live by, it would change their minds and change them very rapidly. And that's why I
think
impress
so too.
upon a lot of people who vote in the presidential election only, like, you need to vote in the midterm elections, because who is in Congress and Senate is most important. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And so I've been trying to impress upon the people who I mentor, the young adults in my family, and some old alike, the importance of the midterm election and people who you should have access to, your state reps, your congressperson, your senator, that you have access to. The likelihood of you being in tune with the president and having his ear and him listening to whatever you have to say and enacting anything that you feel should be changed is very small. But that congressperson, you can put a little heat under them. Your senator, you have access to them. And I think that's what we need to start doing, holding people accountable.
I agree completely.
So with that being said, we're going to go for a break, and we're going to listen to a song called Division. And it's about corruption. And the song is an original song by Josie Redicon. And she is a young woman from the UK that I have been following. So take a listen to Division. And when we come back, we're going to get into the coronavirus. You're listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie. And I have my special guest, Benn Plassman, in the studio, who will have a new show coming up on Inauguration Day, and it will be called what again, Ben?
It will be called Politics, or News, Politics, and Finance in the morning.
All righty. So we'll be right back, and we're going to dive into the COVID-19.
Discussing this thing happier decision, where the future isn't told by what you see on television. And the younger generation will carry forward a nation without frustration, harsh dictation. Everyone has occupation. No more hesitation, no more devastation, no more hierarchy and conversation, and no normalization of not knowing where you're going, not knowing where you're going, not knowing where you're going. To sleep for the night, non-stop conflict, non-stop hate, across the seas in another place. But closer to home also isn't very great. Poverty and oddities all accumulate. Back again, discussing the same old things that are never resolved. And there to the people at the front of this, they get shared before we have the division. That's my vision of a happier decision, where the future isn't told by what you see on television. And the younger generation carry forward a nation without frustration, harsh dictation. Everyone has occupation. No more hesitation, no more devastation, no more hierarchy and conversation, and no normalization of not knowing where you're going, not knowing where you're going, not knowing where you're going. To sleep for the night.
You are listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie on 88.1 FM. If you are here in the Detroit area, 107.3 WVIE in the Virgin Islands, and everyone that's following us on Facebook Live, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm in the studio chopping it up with a friend of mine, Benn Plassman. And as I stated earlier, Owen Roper introduced Ben and I came on Ben's show, It's Your City. And from there, I catapulted into Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk. So in the first segment of the show, we talked a little bit about the end of an era, ERROR, with Trump leaving, and we talked a little bit about Biden-Harris. Ben and I both are MBA holders. We have MBAs. Ben's concentration is finance. Mine was more nonprofit administration. So Ben, give me a little bit more of your view about economics and finance as we get ready to segue into COVID, because that had a huge impact on the economy. But tell me a little bit about your views of economics and finance before we segue into that segment.
Okay. So a lot of times I think there's a misnomer about how people view what makes an economy stronger, economics. I think people think of economics, including some government officials, as the transaction part of it, where I give you money and you want people to be spending money. That's what makes a good economy. And that's really not what it is. And a good way to illustrate it, Valerie, is, let's say you look at a building. Let's say this building that we're in. You look at a building. How is that building made?
Structurally, I would want it to be structurally sound. It has some bricks and
it's
mortar
made by builders, right?
and other stuff, yeah.
And so, really, what a good economy is it's the stuff you have, like buildings like this, and your access to goods and services. And this building, for example, took many people time to create. It took a lot of time to probably build this building. And I don't know, how old do you think this building is? I'm guessing, what, like 30, 40 years at least?
At least.
It's a lot of history to it. So anyways, let's say it took 50 people 6 months to build this building. And I'm not sure how many people. And they worked 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, so 40 hours a week. So it took that long to build this place, and as a result, a certain amount of money was required to do it. Now, years later, let's say somebody wants to build a building just like this. And instead of taking 50 workers 6 months to do, working 40 hours a week, new technology was around. And so now they only had to hire 30 workers. And they had to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for 6 months. That is economic progress. And what I mean by that is when there's fewer inputs, create the same economic output, that's when economic growth really happens. And it's called productivity growth. And what I've seen, what economists see, and this is actually well known in the economics community, but it's not discussed at all in our political debates, is this thing, and they call it productivity growth, which really correlates to about 80% of all economic growth. It has been really low since 1973. And it has come to almost a halt, productivity growth has, since about 2000, 2003. And it's very concerning to people. And so one of the things that I believe we should talk about is how our government can create the conditions for more productivity growth. And really what productivity growth is innovation. And as great of technology we think we have, and we think right now in our time period, and we always think that we've had amazing technological advancements throughout our time periods. But I want you to think, Valerie, let's say my great-great-grandmother, she lived from 1900 to 1960. Over the course of her lifetime, she saw what? The car, the airplane, radio, television. She saw all that come out in 50 years. Now, let's take a look at my grandmother. And let's say one 50-year period for her was 1950 to 2000. Think about the advancements. You have more radio stations on. You might have some more television channels. Flights might have gotten a little bit better. They might have gotten a little cheaper. But the technological progress isn't quite there. But the one thing that they did have was the internet, which is a great technological progress. Now take a look at, let's say, 2000 to 2020. What have been the big accomplishments since then? Can you think of any, like technologically?
Not really.
Nothing, really. I mean, we got smartphones. And why is that? And I'm personally, I believe that many of our corporations have gotten so big that we've almost, in a way, disincentivized innovation. And let's say somebody has a business, they start it up, it's a very innovative, unique business. In this day and age, what has been happening is when a firm is in the stage of startup phase, they go through several stages. When they're in like kind of the middle phase of the startup phase, they usually get bought out. And once a firm gets bought out by a larger firm, innovation stops happening, oftentimes because the founder and the people that created this new firm, or this new firm based on potentially new technology, they are, when they're bought out, they leave. That's a problem, and I think that's one of the reasons why technology and innovation has kind of slowed down over the years. And it's something that we need to think about in terms of how we can improve technological progress and, as a result, economic growth. And so that's how I believe the economy should function. I believe the emphasis should be on creating conditions for economic growth. And I hope that the Biden administration does that, but they've indicated, or they've made no indications that they will.
Well, that was the perfect segue into the next thing, because when we're talking about growth and moving things along this spectrum rapidly, let's talk about Project Warp Speed. Mm-hmm. Project Warp Speed is the name of the project and the process that they are using for the COVID-19 vaccination. Can you run a little bit of that clip for me, Marquise? Let's listen a little bit what Dr. Fauci has to say about this. Just a little bit.
The science of vaccinology, together with the tools of public health are the thing that is going to get us out of this. This will end. This is not something that's going to be with us forever.
All right, tell me more.
Tell me more. I want to know more. Tell me more about vaccines.
Researchers and scientists with the support of the U.S. government are racing against the clock to develop a vaccine against the novel coronavirus.
My name is Dr. Anthony Fauci, and I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health in the Department of Health and Human Services. What we have here with the coronavirus is a virus that's new, that is highly, highly efficient in spreading from human to human, and has a, relatively speaking, a considerable degree of morbidity and mortality. You put all those things together, and that's the perfect storm.
How would a vaccine protect us from the novel coronavirus? The virus that causes COVID-19, known as SARS-CoV-2, is made up of an outer lipid envelope inside of which is coiled a single RNA strand. Once the virus enters the body, its outer protein spikes attach themselves to receptors on cells in the lungs. The spikes allow the RNA strand to slip into healthy cells and reproduce, killing the healthy cell and spewing out multiple new versions of the virus. The host's immune system reacts by creating specific antibodies and by activating immunity cells to fight the virus. A COVID-19 vaccine would provide a protective shield by stimulating immune response ahead of any exposure to the virus.
One of the great triumphs of medical science in dealing with infectious diseases has been vaccinations. It has saved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people's lives. Now you have smallpox eradicated, polio eliminated, measles in many countries eliminated, rubella, mumps, hepatitis, meningitis, all those things.
How do scientists develop a new vaccine?
So, let's get into a little bit about Project Warp Speed. First of all, I want to put on the floor that I worked as an investigational drug research scientist for a very major pharmaceutical company for several years. And I understand the process of taking a drug from animal to man. With the understanding of that process, understanding everything that it takes from phase 1 studies to phase 5 post-market studies to bring a drug into the market and have it be efficacious, I would not let them inoculate me with a COVID-19 vaccination that was brought to fruition at Project Warp Speed. I believe it's unethical. I believe it's not efficacious. And I believe it is a money grab. You will not get close to me with a 10-foot pole with that needle at all. And I am just livid about the first wave of individuals who they are planning to mandate this for. I can see them going into nursing homes, people who already have dementia and are delirious, and inoculating these people with that as a test. I look at the syphilis experiment that happened years ago with Miss Evers' boys. They're looking at the disenfranchised to give this inoculation to so they can finish their scientific study in human healthy individuals, number one. Number two, even I read an article where they were thinking about offering a $1,200 stimulus check for people to take it because they know some of us stupid enough to cash that check. That's one damn check that I don't want to cash. You know, and anybody that's going to go ahead and get inoculated with that stuff, you go ahead. But I guarantee you, you get inoculated in 2021 and 2031, your ass will be calling the number 1-800-LAWYER. You're going to wake up in the middle of the night and a TV commercial is going to be on and it's going to say, hey, did you take the COVID-19 vaccination in 2021? Well, if so, call 1-800-LAWYER because we found some deficiencies. I wouldn't let them touch me with that stuff. Get out of here.
What are some side effects, though, of a vaccine, potentially? Like, have there ever been any studies? I'm asking since
that's the part that I'm talking about, the efficacy. They wouldn't even know what the side effects are because you are running your phase 3 studies in healthy individuals. So you would only get maybe, the small amount of people you have in that baseline versus people who actually have the disease, right? Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't a money grab, why would you rush to market a vaccination instead of a cure? Because there's money in vaccinations, there's money in treatment, there's money in medication. The time that you wanted to put something at warp speed, you could have warped a damn cure for that.
I never
something
thought
that
about
would
that.
stop the respiratory distress of those individuals. It's like a very acute pneumonia in a sense. So you could have done something to eradicate it. Mm-hmm. Rather than to vaccinate it. And then Duggan's on TV, well, we're going to need 5,000 doses a day. For who? For who? I haven't ran across anybody on the west side that was like, shoot me in my damn arm, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So who are you going to do 5,000 doses a day on? Who the hell are you going to shoot with that? God. Not me. I wouldn't even take a flu shot this year. I told my mother, don't take a flu shot because it could be some antibodies in there from the COVID-19 vaccination because they know people don't want to take it. Mm-hmm. I don't trust the government. Do not shoot my mama with that stuff. She's not going nowhere. You won't get the flu. Mm-hmm. I don't trust them.
But how ethical would it be to have a potential vaccine and not allow people to have access to it?
I just don't think the vaccination was the route to go. I am not against vaccinations. I remember getting the MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination with the little gun that you shoot it down. Hell, I still got the scar on my arm. I had to get inoculated before going to school. I remember getting all those vaccinations. I am happy that they did vaccinations for polio and stuff like that. I am not saying that the vaccination is totally off kilter. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is if you wanted to produce something at warp speed, why did it have to be a vaccination and not eradication? Something that would eradicate it.
I would imagine,
raises a brow for me.
I would imagine, though, maybe the vaccination route is something that has worked in the past. If you look at polio and other vaccines that have worked, I've never heard, correct me if I'm wrong, when has there ever been a cure for any disease based on medication? I guess HIV, they've come up with ways to not cure it, but they're coming close to it. But I feel like cures might be harder to get. Am I mistaken? Or
I don't think you're mistaken as part of looking at historically what has happened. But when you talked about advancements, pharmaceutical advancements, where we were then versus where we are now, I don't feel like it's far-fetched. We've had cancer and all of these things around for a long time and they have not found their cure for it yet. But I'm still saying if you wanted to do anything, it would be, the whole thing is to stop people from dying, right? But I feel like you should have developed something different than this vaccination that this company is going to make all of this money off of. And further into that clip, but because we're running out of time, I had Marquise cut it off. But they've already stockpiled this stuff. They have it stockpiled. So the company has already projected how much of this stuff they're going to need. And if you look at the stock of that company is soaring.
I have stock in Moderna, and I sold it about a week ago because it was just too high. I was like, it's going to go down, and it still hasn't gone down.
Yeah, because they're anticipating what's going to happen. So would you take the vaccination?
That depends.
Now, I'm not saying if I'm laying in
I'm
the
not gonna be the
ICU
first
and
to
I'm
take
dying
it.
and they say, hey, this
Yeah.
might help you, I would take it. But that's what I'm talking about. Why couldn't you come up with something for the people who are intubated, laying there dying? Why couldn't you come up with something for that? Rather than to have millions of doses of this vaccination, which you haven't completed your study on efficacy and anything else to even understand how it's going to work, what are the side effects, how is it going to harm people, and all of that. I just don't understand. So I don't know. I tell you what, I'm not taking it in 2021. And for people who have jobs and things of that nature, like, I don't even think it's ethical to make nurses and other people take the flu shot because you work at the hospital.
Really?
It's not a choice. You work here, you're going to take this shot, or you're not going to work here anymore.
Yeah, I see what you mean with that. I do think there's certain vaccines where, like, children get vaccinated, and I do see the merit behind it, because if you don't vaccinate children for, like, their MMR shots, it's much more likely to spread to everyone. You know, and part of the strength of a vaccine isn't that it just makes one person immune. It makes everybody much less likely to get it. And it spreads around when you have group immunity or herd immunity. And so I don't know, though. I don't know what the right answer is.
And they don't either.
Yeah, they definitely don't. And what they do is they make their decisions based on a bunch of polls.
Yeah.
And I find it so cyclical. So, like, the internet causes, in many ways, a much more direct form of democracy. And so people in the media take their cues from what they see on social media. As a result, like, for example, news media, they'll report, like, what gets the most clicks on social media, and then people who watch TV see it, and it's kind of cyclical. You know what I mean? And then politicians go based on polls, and polls are shaped by what people see in the news, and news is shaped by what is on social media. And so sometimes I wonder if, I know COVID-19 is a very terrible sickness, it's a very terrible illness. I know one person who's passed away from it.
I know 6.
6, wow. But sometimes I wonder if we are taking too many precautions. If maybe it's not good to have this extreme of social distancing. And, you know, there is some risk to anything. Why is the government telling us we have to be distant from each other, or we can't go to a restaurant that we want to go to? What happened to individual choice?
I follow you on that, and man, that's a whole show within itself. But I will say this, I had to think logically about that, because social distancing is not new to me. I don't want nobody over my damn house. I don't like getting close around people, you know, so social distancing is not new to me, and I'm cool with it, because I always social distance. Don't come over my house, you know, so I'm kind of all right with it. But I do follow what you're saying, because it's hurting the economy. You know, the flip side of that, you know, if people want to expose themselves and go to restaurants and do these other things, who is the government to take away that choice if that's what they want to do? And so, you know, I guess we need to pick this topic up and talk about it again a little bit more, because our time is up. And that went so quickly. But I want to thank you, my dear friend. Thank you, Owen, for even making the connection with Ben and I. We love you, and we're glad that you're getting well and you're doing better. Ben and I are still doing our thing.
Yeah.
And Ben, tell people about your new show again.
It is it is news, politics, and finance in the morning.
Okay.
And it will start January 20th, Inauguration Day, and will be on 5 days a week thereafter.
Okay, and I will definitely keep my viewers abreast of your show as it gets closer. You let
And I'm
me
sure
know.
you're going to be a guest as well.
And I would love to come on and keep it fro real. We vibe really well off of each other, and I appreciate you. So you have been
Thank you so
listening.
much.
You're welcome.
It's an honor to be on again.
Well, thank you. I would love to keep this door open for you. You're welcome to come anytime.
All right. Well, thank you.
You have been listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, where I don't try to spill the tea or daze you like you've drank a shot of cheap liquor. I just want you to see things from a different perspective. And tonight, it was my perspective and the perspective of my friend Benn Plassman. We will see you next week while I will be talking about devil in the courtroom and bringing more light to the corruption that's going on in Oakland County as these judges and attorneys pillage the assets of poor old people.
There's a lot of
$1
corruption in
million.
Oakland County, by the way.
$1 million and more of assets are being pillaged in Oakland County,
Yeah.
and I will be sounding the alarm and bringing that story to you. You guys have a wonderful week. I love you all. Thank you, Owen, Jerry Fuller, Vicky O's, Joe Sterling, and I can go down the list from all my Inkster peeps. I love you. Thank you so much. I could not do this show without viewers, and everyone else is on the line. I love you all. My cousin Geraldine Warren, one of my biggest friends. You guys have a wonderful week, and we're out of here. So long.
If you haven't already figured it out from the title, this is yet another original song. I've been in quite a songwriting mood the past couple of months, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoy this. They said it would go, but the feeling hasn't gone. They said it would go, but the feeling hasn't gone. Well, I can't tell you what's right, but I just like to say that you can't go back to yesterday. You might find it hard to get your head round the things that I'm about to say.